And we are live. What's up, guys? Welcome to Feta. Today we're going to be covering the murder of JonBenet Ramsey, man. No intro on this one. I'm here with, as you guys know, Angie.
Yes.
Introduce yourself real quick to the people.
Real quick, my name is Angie, and finally we're covering JonBenet Ramsey because it has been requested for quite a while now.
Yeah, you guys been asking.
And yes, so yeah.
So we're here at 3 in the morning for y'all after a fresh fit episode to get this done for y'all, man. Because as you guys know, by the time you guys see this, I'm probably going to be in Houston and/or coming back from Houston. So I want to make sure I get this for you guys so you guys have the content. But anyway, without further ado, let's get right into it. Here, JonBenet Patricia Ramsey, born August 6, 1990, passed away December 25th or 26, 1996, was an American child beauty queen who was killed at the age of 6 in her family's home in Boulder, Colorado. A long handwritten ransom note was found in the home. Her father, John, let me enlarge this for y'all real quick. Her father, John, found the girl's body in the basement of their house about 7 hours after she had been reported missing. She had sustained a broken skull from a blow to the head and had been strangled. A garrote was found tied around her neck. The autopsy report stated that JonBenet's official cause of death was asphyxia by strangulation associated with a craniocerebral trauma. Okay, so head trauma. Her death was ruled a homicide. The case generated worldwide public and media interest, in part because her mother, Patsy Ramsey, a former beauty queen, had entered JonBenet into a series of child beauty pageants. The crime is still considered a cold case and remains an open investigation with the Boulder Police Department. The Boulder Police Department initially suspected that the ransom note had been written by Patsy and that the note and appearance of JonBenet's body had been staged by her parents in order to cover up the murder.
You're literally telling the whole document.
Well, no, I'm not going to go into the whole. Woman, be quiet.
Stupid.
All right.
Okay.
I'm obviously I'm just going over the little basic stuff here, and then we're gonna continue on. But and then what was I gonna say here? Sorry. The Boulder police initially suspected that ransom note had been written by Patsy, and that the note and appearance of JonBenet's body had been staged by her parents in order to cover up the murder. Okay. In 1998, the police and district attorney both said that JonBenet's brother Burke, who was 9 years old at the time of her death, was not a suspect. All right. So that's kind of a summary, guys, of what's going on here. But we're gonna go ahead and cover this documentary, which pretty good. Shout out to Angie for finding this. This documentary. So we're gonna play this and react to it and give some commentary. So yeah, without further ado, Angie, you got anything you want to say before we play it?
No, we can do it. We can start.
What was that?
We can start now.
All right, fair enough. Let's get into it, guys.
Note was left in your daughter's gun? We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left in our daughter's gun. A note was left in your daughter's gun?
This frantic voice belonged to Patsy Ramsey, the mother of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey from Boulder, Colorado. Patsy discovered her daughter's disappearance after finding a ransom note as she walked down her steps the day after Christmas. She immediately called the police for help. In a tragic turn of events, the lifeless body of JonBenet would be found in the basement of the home later that day.
Keep your babies close to you. There's someone out there.
Was it an abduction gone wrong? Or was JonBenet's murder the goal all along? What really happened in that basement on that cold Christmas night in 1996? Welcome back to Mysterious 7, where we shed light on mysterious cases from across the globe. Today, we're looking into the 26-year-old bizarre...
And shout out to this channel. This channel is the Mysterious 7. Go ahead and subscribe. Give them a like, guys. Okay, show them some support because this is a pretty good one. And once again, thanks to Angie for finding this because there were a couple documentaries on this, but I mean, what were the issues with them? They were just like boring, not as good, or
they rumble way too much about like meaningless details. So
gotcha. Okay.
Case of JonBenet Ramsey. If you still haven't subscribed to our channel, please hit the subscribe button and press the notification bell below. Let's dive right into this mystery without any further ado. In 1979, former beauty queen Patsy was only 22 when she met a 14-year senior businessman, John Ramsey. The couple were married the following year on November 5th, 1980.
Yeah, because he had that, you know what I'm saying? We're going to talk about their money here in a second.
John was divorced from his first wife, with whom he had 3 children. After 7 years of marriage, Patsy gave birth to their first son, Burke Ramsey, who was born on January 27, 1987. With his keen interest in business and a master's degree in business administration, in 1989, John formed the Advanced Product Group, one of 3 companies that later merged to become Access Graphics. The following year, on August 6, 1990, Patsy gave birth to their second child, a daughter in Atlanta, naming her JonBenet Patricia Ramsey. Her first name, an homage to her father, and her middle name to her mother.
I wanna be a cowboy singer. God bless America.
Shortly after her birth, in 1991, the family moved to Boulder, Colorado.
I will say that I don't agree with putting children in pageants. I think it's a little weird and strange, and I don't think it's appropriate. Granted, I know it's something that's been around forever, but I don't think I just don't believe in beautifying and or sexualizing children. I just
I used to be
disagree with
one.
it. Used to be a pageant
When I
person
was
too?
8, yeah.
Really?
My mom took me out because of this, because of what you're saying.
Oh, because it was like too
Yeah, they will like just make us do like fashion shows, like the really like unnecessary stuff that we didn't need to do.
Yeah.
But as being kids, like, so yeah, she took me out.
Yeah, I couldn't picture my daughter wearing makeup as a child. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
it's
just don't
weird.
like that. So, I mean, I get it, like pageants are like a thing, but I disagree with them. I don't think we should have
I
little
agree.
girls
I
in
agree.
pageants. But that's just me.
For the business. Moving into a mansion in Boulder, the Ramseys were one of the wealthiest families in Boulder. Alongside the 15-bedroom mansion, the family owned 2 private jets, 1 yacht, and 1 holiday home in Michigan. John was, at that time, the CEO of Access Graphics, which would go on to become a billion-dollar company by selling Unix-based computer systems. His net worth was estimated at $6.4 million by 1996. While John took care of the finances, socialite Patsy devoted most of her time at home looking after her 2 children. Burke was a shy and quiet kid, but JonBenet was very well-spoken and outgoing.
She was a spark plug. She was very extroverted. We say she showed up in life as like, ta-da, I'm here,
Starting from when JonBenet was very young, Patsy entered her in children's beauty contests,
This big
and she was
memories.
tremendous in her performances with her poised smile, bouncy blonde hair, and glittery costumes. With her mother's training, who was a pageant girl herself, JonBenet won the first pageant she was ever entered into and would go on to win many more trophies in her short life. She attended High Peaks Elementary School by the time she turned 6 in 1996. The Christmas celebrations in 1996 began like any other Christmas. Little JonBenet got a bike as a Christmas gift that year. The Ramsey family spent the
And real quick, just so you guys know, $7 to $6 million back then was approximately 13 million today, as far as inflation goes back in '96. And the crazy part is that she's my age, guys. I was born in 1990 as well. So this is wild to me that and tragic that someone will lose their life so early on.
evening at a Christmas party hosted by family friend Fleet White. According to statements, while returning home, JonBenet had fallen asleep in the car, so John carried her up the stairs to her room and put her to bed at around 9:30 p.m. Shortly after, Patsy and John went to bed, as they planned to get up early to prepare for a trip to their holiday home on Lake Michigan. The following day, on December 26, 1996, Patsy awoke just after 5 a.m. As she was walking down the stairs to the kitchen, she found a 2.5-page ransom note. The note said that JonBenet had been kidnapped by a small foreign faction and was being held for a ransom of $118,000, which needed to be exchanged the next day for her safe return. The letter also warned that if the money was not delivered or the police contacted, the child would be killed.
$118,000 back then, guys, is roughly $226,000 today.
An hysterical Patsy yelled to John as she ran back up the stairs and opened the door to JonBenet's room. Discovering that she wasn't there, they made the decision to call the police.
We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left and our daughter's gone. A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter? 6 years old. She's gone. 6 years old.
It was at 5:25 a.m. when the 911 call was dispatched. Deputies from the Boulder Police Department arrived at the Ramsey family home just 7 minutes after the call came in. Meanwhile, the Ramseys called several friends and family members over to their home. The officers conducted a quick search of the house and reported no obvious signs of forced entry or any struggle. The only room sectioned off was JonBenet's room, which they believed was the kidnapping scene. Upon finding no evidence in the ransom letter at first glance, detectives had no other option but to wait for the ransom call that was supposed to come in between 8 and 10 a.m. based on the note.
When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery.
However, even after waiting for several hours, no such call.
And most of the time, guys, these ransom things never work out, whether, the person is killed anyway, or they can't get the money, or something occurs, it almost always fails.
Came in. At around 1 p.m., John was asked by detectives to search the whole house top to bottom to check if anything was missing. John's friend, Fleet White, decided to join him in the search, and together they decided to start from the bottom of the house, which is the basement. As John and Fleet were walking through the basement, they opened the door to a disused wine cellar that had been overlooked by investigators during the initial search. There, they were confronted with a gruesome scene. Inside the darkened basement room, in a corner, little JonBenet was lying lifeless, wrapped in a white blanket and a sweatshirt. Her eyes were closed, her mouth was covered with black duct tape, and a nylon rope was wrapped tightly around her neck. Her right hand was bound with a piece of rope, which was also used to fashion a handcrafted garrote used to strangle her. JonBenet was wearing a white knit shirt with a sequin-decorated star on its chest, and her white underwear was stained with urine. John immediately picked up his daughter's body, loosened up the ropes, tore the tape off her mouth, and brought her to the upstairs living room,
I want to say
potentially
something.
destroying
Go
crucial evidence in the process.
Yeah,
Big-
and that's really
big
bad for
lose-
destroying evidence.
Big lose for the police, the Colorado Police Department,
Yeah, that's a L.
because they left these people contaminate the crime scene.
Yep.
Big
Yep.
lose.
And I mean, I get it. It's like an emotional thing. So they're like, you see your daughter there. You're not going to think twice like, oh, yeah, let me preserve the crime scene. You're thinking, oh, she might be still alive. Let me try to do
Yeah.
something, So,
They
yeah.
fucked
In the
it up.
process of doing that, they absolutely ruined.
But they also the parents called people and friends and neighbors to help for the search of the girl,
Uh-huh.
and they also walked around the house. They were checking everywhere, so
Yep.
they fucked it up.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And they're not sworn law enforcement officers. So them going ahead and finding evidence isn't going to help at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this definitely was a big L, guys, because there was, who knows what kind of potential DNA
Mm-hmm.
evidence they fucked around with at that point.
Well, when I first found her, it was just a rush of, thank God I found her.
Mhm.
And it was a relief, like a overwhelming relief that I'd found her. And then I realized pretty quickly that she wasn't alive.
And I get it. You're the dad,
As soon as John put his daughter on the floor, Patsy collapsed right on top of the body while crying and screaming at the top of her lungs. As friends and family began to console the grief-stricken parents, police began to investigate the crime scene. As police headed to the basement to inspect the crime scene, they noticed that the basement was partitioned into several smaller rooms. The old wine cellar, where the body had been found, was also used for storage. It was filled with various arts and crafts, decorations, and old paint cans. There was a room to the northwest in the basement where a storm window with a broken window pane was discovered.
First thing I noticed, obviously, was the 3 sets of windows in the wall up there. And I noticed the broken window and the suitcase. When I see a blue suitcase below a window, the first thing that I'm thinking was the intent eventually by the perpetrator to put the body in a suitcase and remove the body from the crime scene.
I have
John claimed that he broke it last summer after locking.
I have
Go ahead.
the basement floor plan here.
Oh, you do?
If you want to show it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll pull that up for you guys right now if you can send that to me.
Okay, cool.
Himself out of the house, and because they lived in a safe neighborhood, he never bothered to fix it. The window is how police believe the killer gained entry to the property. A suitcase was positioned under the window in the basement, which was believed to have helped the intruder get back out of the window. At the crime scene, near where the body was found, investigators found a partial footprint and a palm print on the door of the wine cellar in the basement, both of which could not be identified. The autopsy report of JonBenet Ramsey revealed many grim details about her death. The child had several minor injuries, including an abrasion on her cheek and tiny hemorrhages around her eyelids.
And guys, I do have the crime scene photos here, which they're graphic. I'm not going to show them,
Yeah, I
obviously, for
found
obvious
them.
reasons, because it's YouTube, and honestly, it pisses me off because I don't think, yeah, I'm just not going to show pictures of a child deceased. I'm just not going to do it. But if you guys want to look at them, I'll put them there in the link for you guys if you want to look. But yeah, the bastard that did this deserves to rot in hell. But you guys can check them out if you want. But I
You
just I'm
shouldn't
just not
like
gonna put
even
it.
put him, you know?
Yeah,
It's horrible.
yeah, it's really.
I mean,
Granted, you
I've
don't see her face or anything. You see like her hands and stuff, but it's still disturbing. So anyway, yeah.
Back of her ankles also had minor abrasions.
There.
Her skull was fractured as a result of blunt force trauma to her head. However, the official cause of her death was ruled as asphyxia by strangulation. She'd been strangled twice with a nylon cord, which had been tied to a makeshift garrote, which was made from a broken piece of one of Patsy's paintbrushes. No alcohol or medications were discovered in her system. However, the coroner found traces of pineapple in JonBenet's stomach. Later, her parents claimed they did not remember giving her any pineapple the night before she died, but there was a bowl of pineapple in the kitchen which had her 9-year-old brother Burke's fingerprints on it. Her underwear, as well as her leggings, were consistent with urine stains. Her area was wiped clean, and the underwear did not contain any. However, it had DNA from an unknown male. Even with all this evidence, investigators were not able to link anyone to the crime. But later in the investigation, all these pieces of evidence separately gave birth to many theories. Although JonBenet was strangled by a nylon cord, the object that was used to hit her in the head was never identified, despite a few objects having been called up for debate. A metal baseball bat was found by the wine cellar door later on in the search, but this could have been placed there by one of the staff on the property. Another object in question is the flashlight found on the kitchen counter, the head of which was consistent with the shape of the injury found on JonBenet's head. Needless to say, the Boulder Police Department failed to properly secure the crime scene and protect evidence.
Boulder Police Department.
They not only let the family and friends roam around the house, with some of them even cleaning up, but they also sent John to search the house instead of doing it themselves. Their negligence compromised potential evidence which might have been left at the crime scene, as well as on the victim's body. After their initial fumble, the investigation took a different direction. Investigators started with a theory of intruders, but soon they zeroed in on the Ramseys due to some concerning evidence. Apparently, investigators discovered that not only the ransom note was written on one of Patsy's notepads using her pen, but handwriting experts from CBI who had eliminated John Ramsey as the note's author.
CBI, guys, is the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. So that's similar to the TBI that I broke down for you guys on the Nashville shooting. It's the Colorado's version of the state police investigators, so they're CBI special agents. Similar to, think of them as the state version for Colorado of the FBI.
Couldn't do the same for Patsy. Comparing the ransom note with Patsy's handwriting sample, they could neither eliminate her as the writer nor say definitively that she was. Investigators made another startling discovery regarding the note. The ransom money was the exact same amount as John Ramsey's Christmas bonus from that year. Police found it extremely odd that not only did the intruders demand only $118,000, which is considerably low compared to the millions the Ramseys had in their bank account, but they also took time writing and practicing a ransom note inside the house. The extremely long and bizarre note also contained several movie quotes, which perplexed investigators.
We catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. In the movie, instead of it actually being a dog,
a dog breed is actually mentioned. If you alert bank authorities, don't try to grow a brain, John. A certain character who was an LAPD police officer who was on a runaway bus was talking to a mad bomber on his cell phone.
Yeah, I know
The
that
movie was Speed.
There was another red flag investigators focused
I guess the killer really enjoyed pop culture, man. Like,
Yeah.
what the hell?
I love
their
that
attention
movie.
on. John and Patsy claimed that their eldest child, Burke, who was just 9 years old during the incident, was sleeping the entire time Patsy and John were frantically looking for their daughter and was only awoken by his father after they called the police. Yet the 911 dispatcher claimed that she heard the voice of a third person when Patsy thought she hung up the call but was still on the line. Some people assume that the voice was Burke's.
So I remained on the phone trying to hear what was being said. It sounded like there were two voices in the room, maybe three different ones.
The other anomaly in their story was that both John and Patsy were adamant that JonBenet fell asleep in the car and they carried her to bed without her ever waking. So the discovery of pineapple in JonBenet's stomach and a pineapple-filled bowl with Burke's fingerprints on it fueled the suspicion that JonBenet's family were not telling the complete truth. One investigator theorized that Burke accidentally hit his sister in the head with the nearby flashlight after a fight ensued between them regarding the pineapple. In the fear of losing two of their children, John and Patsy staged the crime scene with a ransom note to make it look like an intruder was responsible for the murder. In an attempt to find clues, police even interviewed Burke separate from his parents on multiple occasions, but could not reach any conclusion. One other theory was that it was Patsy who killed her own daughter after JonBenet approached her mother with a bedwetting incident that Christmas night. Apparently,
I think that's kind of crazy.
the 6-year-old was a regular bedwetter and even often wore diapers despite her age. Many suspected that Patsy, who allegedly had some psychological issues at the time, attacked JonBenet in a fit of rage, eventually killing her. Some believe that she, along with John, covered the crime to look like a kidnapping and later deliberately compromised evidence to divert the investigation. The news of the horrific death of the 6-year-old beauty queen, who was the daughter of a millionaire, broke like wildfire.
JonBenet Ramsey, the little girl in Colorado, was murdered.
Beauty queen JonBenet. JonBenet's murder has frightened residents of Boulder.
Local, national, and even international media followed the murder of JonBenet Ramsey closely. Picture.
And I'll tell you guys this, as someone, you know, who's her age, I remember vividly when I was a kid, right around 9, 10 years old, years after she had died, they were still talking about this on the news. They were still interviewing the parents. This was huge back in the day.
Of the little girl wearing full makeup and
this is 20 years ago now at this point, over 20 years ago.
Glittery outfits were splayed on the covers of every tabloid magazine. As America continued to speculate if the Ramseys caused the death of their own child, their lawyer criticized the media for character assassination against his clients. He also accused Boulder police of leaking false and distorted information to the media to apply pressure and elicit a confession from John and Patsy. Just a day after JonBenet's burial in St. Francis Episcopal Cemetery in Marietta, Georgia, John and Patsy gave their first public appearance. On January 1st, 1996, the Ramsey parents pleaded on CNN for help finding their daughter's murderer. In their first public comment on the murder, Patsy says that there's a killer on the loose.
There is a killer on the loose. I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's a he or a she. But if I were a resident of Boulder, I will tell my friends to keep your babies close to you.
Many people, including some in law enforcement, found the interview and their body language suspicious, but no solid proof ever emerged in support of the theory. This interview forged a path for dozens of other interviews from the Ramsey family over the years, but none led to any significant clues that could unravel the mystery.
And they were being interviewed, guys, into the early 2000s. I vividly remember back in like it was either late 99 or 2000 or 2001, they were still talking to these parents about this case, man. And like I had saw it on like Dateline or one of these mainstream television. I know I'm just showing my age right now because TV used to be the thing back then, guys. It wasn't like Netflix and streaming like you guys see nowadays. Like if you wanted the news, you had to turn on the TV to be able to do it or read the newspaper. So yeah, they were interviewing them into the late 90s, early 2000s, man. I remember about this case.
That's crazy. I don't understand how can they bear to be interviewed that many times.
Yeah, it is a little crazy, right?
It is. I
Yeah.
mean, if you have a missing child, you have a missing child, dead child. Like, why will you be reminded? Like, what will you want to be reminded of? Like,
I mean,
all the time?
maybe because they want to get justice, right? I could see that perspective as well. But at the same time, yeah, you're opening a wound every time you go and do that interview.
Exactly, but also like it's repeating the same story as well.
Yeah.
Like, well, what could they say that could be different? Like, if they hadn't said it, like their interviews.
True.
I don't understand.
True. Very, very true. But hey, man, anything for clout, right?
It was months before investigators were able to obtain the clothing the Ramseys had worn the night their daughter was killed.
That was the only way to get clout back then, bro. If you weren't on TV, you were nobody, bro. Like, there's no social media, none of that. There ain't no. You're not gonna build a platform unless you get on TV back then.
Well, the only reason I would think is money. Like if they get paid for each interview.
But they have money, so that's another
Exactly.
which is also strange to me. So I don't know. Yeah.
And even longer before they could get access to the parents' phone records and credit card bills. While there had already been a DNA test done by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, a secondary one was done by Maryland's Cellmark Laboratories, and JonBenet's parents remained under the umbrella of suspicion. Needless to say, the Ramsey family was extremely upset with the investigation. They felt that both Boulder police and the media were targeting them deliberately without any hard evidence. Just months after the murder, once these allegations came to light, the Ramseys stopped cooperating and stopped giving interviews to police, despite previously cooperating with the investigation and even submitting their DNA samples willingly.
The Ramseys attorneys wanted all the questions. They said they wouldn't go in for an interview with the police because they didn't know what the police were going to ask.
All further interactions with investigators were set about by their lawyer, whom they hired soon after the murder following a friend's advice. In February of 1997, District Attorney Alex Hunter announced that they had formed an expert prosecution task force, vowing to bring JonBenet's killer to justice. The team included forensic expert Henry Lee and DNA specialist Barry Scheck, who were both—
Henry Lee is very famous. He has a whole part of University of New Haven named after him. I think it's called the Henry Lee School of Forensic Science.
Both involved with O.J. Simpson's defense team. In March of the same year, just 3 months after the killing, the DA asked Detective Lou Smith, who had longtime expertise involving tricky homicides, to join the investigation. He initially explored the Boulder Police Department's theory of JonBenet's mother, Patsy Ramsey, being the killer and writing the ransom note she said she had found in her home. However, 18 months after joining the investigation, Detective Smith resigned, accusing the Boulder police of unfairly targeting the Ramseys as suspects, despite substantial evidence to the contrary.
Some people call it tunnel vision. Perhaps that's the case. They have just stopped at the Ramseys. Plain and simple. They've gone to the Ramseys and they've stopped.
In his resignation letter, dated September 20th, 1998, he stated that he believed the Ramseys did not do it. He further explained that there was credible evidence of an intruder and a lack of evidence that the parents were involved. After leaving the investigation, Smith independently worked on the case for years on his own dime. Unfortunately, he passed away before seeing the case resolved. On October 13, 1999, Boulder District Attorney Alex Hunter announced that a grand jury had finished its investigation, and he was not interested in filing charges against the Ramseys because of a lack of evidence. The Ramseys released a statement following this announcement, saying that it was no satisfaction since a child killer remained free and undetected. What was unknown at the time, but was reported by CNN 14 years later, was that in 1999, the grand jury had, indeed, voted to indict both John and Patsy Ramsey on charges of child abuse resulting in death and being accessories to a crime. According to unsealed court documents, Both parents were thought to have hindered the original investigation in multiple different ways. But Hunter refused to file the charges.
So that's clear, guys. So it wasn't that they were the killers. It was that they impeded the investigation to the point that it was significantly damaged so they couldn't catch the actual killers. That's a very important distinction.
Even though the grand jury voted for them, believing he did not have enough to get a conviction.
We do not have sufficient.
That's true, guys. Remember, just because you have enough to indict does not mean that you have enough to win a trial. And keep in mind, he's not stupid, okay? He knows that the Ramseys got what? And when they got money, what does that mean? They can get a good defense team. And that means that they're going to fight this thing tooth and nail. And what's more than likely going to happen, it's going to be a big, easy.
That was easy.
Victory for the Ramseys. And they don't want to lose, okay? So any defense attorney with half a brain would have been able to fight off these prosecutors.
Denied.
And get the Ramseys off. So they looked at it like, just because we have enough to indict does not mean that we have enough to convict them beyond a reasonable doubt. Keep in mind, guys, for all my international viewers out there and guys that aren't too well versed in the law, to indict someone, all you need is probable cause. To convict someone, you need beyond a reasonable doubt, which is substantially more than just probable cause.
Evidence to warrant the filing of charges against anyone who has been investigated at this time.
Although they were never officially charged, many people, including many in the media, still held them responsible for JonBenet's death, despite their continuous claims of innocence. The Ramsey family continued giving interviews at regular intervals and even released a book entitled Death of Innocence in 2000, naming 3 potential suspects, none of whom would ever be held.
I think I saw an episode of them promoting this book, by the way, guys, in the early 2000s. Because they did more interviews to promote this book.
Okay, this is just dumb now.
Yeah, weird, huh?
What would you
accountable for?
What would you get a book, man? Why would you write a book about this? Like, this is just like, I don't know.
Well, you know, I mean, if you didn't do it, I guess like it would be annoying to be accused of
Still,
killing your own child.
you're
But
getting money out of it. It's
that's true.
The murder.
It's weird. Everything they're doing is weird. But that does not necessarily mean they're guilty. But we'll see here.
In 2006, the Ramsey family faced another tragic loss. After a long battle with ovarian cancer, Patsy Ramsey took her last breath on June 24, 2006, at the age of 49. As years passed, the Ramsey family continued to protest their innocence as they continued to demand justice for JonBenet. On July 9, 2008, nearly 12 years after the murder, in a press conference, Boulder District Attorney Mary Lacey publicly exonerated and cleared the entire Ramsey family of responsibility for the death of JonBenet Ramsey. Lacey cited new methods of DNA analysis, suggesting that the Ramsey family did not have anything to do with their daughter's killing. In a
Bam, cleared. You know.
a letter.
Oh, look, the DA actually sent them a letter. Mr. John Ramsey, dear Mr. Ramsey, as you are aware, since December 2002, the Boulder District Attorney's Office has been the agency responsible for the investigation of the homicide of your daughter, JonBenet. I understand the fact that we have not been able to identify the person who killed her is a great disappointment that is a continuing hardship for you and your family. However, significant new evidence has recently been discovered through the application of relatively new
she also apologized to the family
of DNA analysis. This new scientific evidence
for contributing in any way to the public perception that they
convinces us that it is appropriate given
might
the
have been involved in this crime.
circumstances of this case. God damn it. Hold on, guys. I'm gonna get it for y'all.
Contributing in any way to the public perception that they might have been involved in this crime.
Okay. Circumstances of this case to state that we do not, and I probably ends up want to pursue charges and do not think you're culpable, blah, blah, blah.
In August 2009, Boulder police announced that they were reactivating the case with the help of a newly created 20-person advisory task force to further work on JonBenet's murder. Since then, the case has remained open, though no new suspects have been named publicly. Investigators revealed in a statement that they had tested over 1,500 pieces of evidence, analyzed nearly 1,000 DNA samples, interviewed more than 1,000 individuals, and investigated over 21,000 tips through 19 states, but always came up empty-handed. In late 2016, just months before the 20th anniversary of JonBenet's murder, CBS released a special on this crime, where a team of investigators suggested a theory that involved John and Patsy Ramsey creating a fake crime scene to cover up Burke Ramsey's involvement in accidentally killing his younger sister. After its release, Burke filed a $750 million defamation lawsuit
you know that's coming.
CBS, the producers of the documentary, as well as the experts who were seen in the documentary. Burke also separately sued a forensic pathologist who gave an interview promoting the documentary. Breaking a 20-year silence, in September of 2016, the nearly 30-year-old Burke Ramsey appeared on the Dr. Phil show and spoke publicly about the murder for the first time. While addressing some of the conspiracy theories surrounding his involvement in the murder, he denied killing his sister several times. He also complained about the media's perception.
Yeah, guys, if you guys want a little bit of a laugh, go watch that interview. He was really weird. I ain't gonna lie. Very strange. Maybe I'll pull it up for you guys if they don't hit me with the copyright.
Of the case, and said it had led him to seek a more private life as an adult. Many people criticized this interview, addressing Burke's uncomfortable grinning throughout the entirety of the episode.
Yes, it was weird as hell. And you know what? Let's go. You know what? Fuck it. It is what it is. If we get hit with the copyright, it is what it is. And you guys can see here that the house is on sale right now for nearly $7 million. Holy. Out there in Boulder, Colorado. Okay. So if you guys want to get chapped lips, move out there to Boulder. Let's see here. So you go YouTube, right? Burke Ramsey. Shout out to my boy Andrew Tate. Free. Him and Tristan. I was talking with them today. They're doing well, guys. Burke Ramsey interview Dr. Phil. Comes right up, right? Here it is.
It's the season premiere of the...
Speak to them. Why 14 years?
The ransom note reported...
Grateful for her being there.
He continued. Did you know she... It gets worse.
What the hell?
To begin to realize...
Was it back?
Over the...
No, go back.
Any and all...
Company's...
You had gone to... Indian...
Complex.
God damn it. Sorry, guys. I don't think this is it.
No, it's not that one. This is the one that it was.
We
That
click
one.
this one.
Yeah, it's that one.
Like, had I ever been to a funeral before, period? I'm not sure.
Who was with you when you were standing and viewing her?
Me and my mom and my dad.
How were they behaving?
You could tell my dad loved my sister a lot, and they're both crying.
Hold on, let me see if I can get a better quality for you guys. This is probably
The
it.
murder of 6-year-old.
There we go. Okay, let's fast forward a little bit. Where is he?
He didn't have to get up and go check because he knew exactly what had happened.
I mean, I didn't know if there's some bad guy downstairs.
Yeah, that is a weird grin, actually. What the hell?
Yeah.
Then you look here. It's weird to think that at least no one in the world knows exactly what happened. The fact that the man says it will remain unsolved. I've seen many detectives solve mystery deaths when they put their heart in that hope. JonBenet gets her justice she deserves. Let's see here.
Yeah, it's just people like showing.
Okay. The brother's perpetual smile is not only inappropriate, it's absolutely horrifying. Yeah, it is a little weird, bro. Yeah, I mean, look at that.
Dad was chasing off with a gun.
Everyone looks at the interview of Burke and thinks, why is this young man smiling?
Yeah.
I don't see a smile as much as I see an uncomfortable facial expression. But I don't...
That's true. Some people are weird as fuck and just smile when they're getting interviewed. But, I mean, it was weird as hell. You know what I mean? It definitely... Oh, here we go. Dr. Phil.
Are you aware of these different theories that are out there?
I didn't know they were camps, I guess.
And these are people that post online. The shorthand is RDI, Ramsey did it, IDI, the intruder did it, or BDI, Burke did it. Do you know the theories that they set forth in saying that your mom killed JonBenet?
I don't know the details, but I know the ransom note, they think the handwriting match.
Have you seen it? Have you read it?
I don't think I've read the whole thing. I've definitely seen pictures of it, though.
Did the handwriting look familiar to you at all? Had you seen it ever before?
No.
Is that the real
So,
thing?
like, the listen
Nah, of course not. It's probably a copy.
carefully is very distinct, and I've never really seen that.
The real one's going to be in the evidence vault at
Yeah.
the Boulder Police Department.
I don't know. I've never really looked at it closely because I'll see it and kind of get taken aback, and it's not something I really want to look at like a lot, you know?
Right. Does that look like her handwriting?
Honestly, looking at that, she would always bug me about having good handwriting, and she would like make me rewrite stuff to try to get.
Yeah, he's awkward fuck. Oh, and they turned the comments off, of course. This is the actual Dr. Phil channel. That was probably because they were roasting him for being weird. So,
Despite all the concerning factors and allegations against the Ramseys, they were not the only suspects in JonBenet's murder. As twisted as this case is, there was, in fact, a pool of suspects who were not in the Ramsey family. Over the years, a number of people were under the light of suspicion for the little girl's tragic demise. Unfortunately, every effort from the investigation to look into them was in vain. One of those suspects was Gary Oliva, a then 32-year-old known sex offender in Boulder, Colorado. Given the fact that there was unknown male DNA on JonBenet's underwear and she was thought to have been sexually molested, Gary was looked into as a suspect. More concerningly, the convicted pedophile had been living in the area on and off when police allegedly found a magazine cutout with JonBenet's picture in his backpack after he was apprehended on drug charges in 2000. Allegedly, not long after this murder, he also confessed to one of his friends about hurting a little girl.
This is another thing
Abdul, get the rocks!
This is another reason why little girls shouldn't be on pageants.
Yeah, pageants. Yeah, I agree.
And I get this
Weirdos like
terrifying
this guy.
phone call.
Yeah.
He's screaming, I heard a little girl. It was shock. It was pure shock.
He was soon released from prison, but the suspicions remained. However, in later years, he was cleared as a suspect based on DNA testing. Another potential suspect was an electrician named Michael Helgoth, who worked in a nearby auto salvage yard around the time of the murder. Allegedly, Michael had been tied to an alleged property dispute involving the Ramseys. The investigating officers speculated whether or not he was involved in the despicable act of JonBenet's murder out of revenge against her parents. Allegedly, Helgoth made multiple concerning statements to one of his colleagues shortly before JonBenet's murder, such as he couldn't wait until Christmas, as he and a partner were about to make $50,000 to $60,000 each. He also made a comment about what it would feel like to crack a human skull. Oddly enough, he committed suicide just 2 days after a 1997 press conference announcing that the Boulder DA was zeroing in on a new suspect. However, Helgoth has since been cleared by DNA. In 2006, investigators seemingly got a breakthrough in the case out of the blue when a former schoolteacher, John Mark Carr, confessed to JonBenet's death in graphic detail, saying that it was an accident. Carr was arrested in Thailand, where he'd been living after facing child pornography charges in the U.S.
John Mark Carr, 41 years old, was arrested for the murder of JonBenet Ramsey yesterday morning at approximately 6 a.m. in Bangkok, Thailand.
He was immediately flown to Boulder for questioning, but his testimony was not consistent with the details of the crime. He claimed that he drugged JonBenet before her murder, but there were no traces of drugs found in the victim's system during the autopsy. In his confession, he'd mostly provided only basic facts that were publicly known and failed to provide any additional convincing details.
And guys, this is actually more surprising than you think, people making false confessions like this.
Was ultimately cleared after his DNA failed to match the profile of an unknown male found on the victim and written off as a pedophile who was after notoriety and fame.
They do anything for clout, man.
Okay. Now I see.
However, his confession and arrest made headlines in the international media, eventually turning into a media fiasco. Bill McReynolds, a retired professor and a family friend, also found himself on the police radar regarding the death of JonBenet. McReynolds had dressed up as Santa Claus the week before JonBenet's murder to entertain the neighborhood children at one of Patsy's famous Christmas gatherings, and allegedly gave JonBenet a card promising her a special gift after Christmas. Allegedly, McReynolds was rumored to have paid a little too much attention to JonBenet, going so far as to arrange a secret visit from Santa Claus on Christmas Eve. His strange behavior made him a questionable man in the eyes of authorities, as well as the Ramsey family. To add fuel to the fire, there were two more coincidences that emerged upon digging into McReynolds' past. His own daughter was abducted along with one of her female friends and was forced to witness the sexual assault of her friend exactly 22 years to the day before JonBenet's murder. Additionally, McReynolds' wife wrote a play about a young girl being sexually assaulted and murdered in a basement, a story that was eerily similar to JonBenet's. However, the story was based on the true story of Sylvia Likens. Despite this particular suspect generating buzz in the media, it failed to amount to anything substantial. After McReynolds' death in 2002, however, authorities deemed him highly unlikely to have been responsible for the crime. According to one theory, a 68-year-old Colorado woman, Bernice Johnson, an inmate at the Denver Women's Correctional Facility, claimed that her ex-partner and her daughter's father, Todd Fuss, had some role to play in the JonBenet Ramsey case. Given that their child was possibly in some of the same pageants as JonBenet, she said that Todd might have been at the same location and event as JonBenet on a few occasions and developed a sick fantasy about her in his mind. She also made allegations that he had previously been caught watching young girls. While this claim itself led to a whole new theory, Todd was later cleared after his DNA did not match the crime scene DNA. The last suspect in this list is Linda Hoffman Pugh, who voiced her suspicions about Patsy for accidentally killing JonBenet. While Linda worked as a housekeeper, her husband Mervyn Pugh worked as a handyman for the Ramsey family. Suspicion first fell on Linda when Patsy claimed to investigators that Linda and Mervyn were struggling for money at the time and asked for a loan of several $1,000s from the Ramsey family, which was rejected. Investigators speculated that Linda, who was known to carry a key to the home, could have led a trusting JonBenet down into the basement on Christmas night in an attempt to trick her employers into leaving money for her ransom, but somehow ended up accidentally killing her. It was also possible that she could have learned about John Ramsey's Christmas bonus and chosen that as her demand. Additionally, she did not even have a solid alibi for the night of the murder. Reportedly, police took her fingerprints and several strands of her hair, but never officially charged her as a suspect in JonBenet's slaying. Just a few months ago, John Ramsey came out with his take on the investigation, and needless to say, he was not very pleased with it. In fact, John Ramsey slammed the investigators for not doing their job properly, as he believed that there was a huge connection between his daughter's murder and a frightening attack carried out just 9 months later on another young girl who went to the same dance school as JonBenet. The perpetrator, however, was never found, just like in the case of our slain beauty queen.
Yep, crazy stuff.
Riddled with conflicting theories, false confessions, and a pool of suspects, the 26-year-old mystery of who killed America's tiny pageant queen has long become a white whale for conspiracy theorists and armchair detectives alike. Just last year, John Ramsey started a campaign for the case to be sent to be handled by another agency, and for DNA samples to be sent to a private lab to be retested with the latest DNA technology. As of now, the killer has still not been found, and no official suspects have been publicly named. However, supporters, investigators, and JonBenet's existing family still hold out hope that one day this tragic murder will be solved. The case, which is considered one of the most notorious unsolved murders in America, continues to baffle people.
Crazy, 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 man. Crazy stuff. Very sad. So yeah, guys, that is the case of JonBenet Ramsey. As you guys could see, many winding turns. I'm glad that the parents were exonerated, because that's got to be terrible for you to be parents and be accused of being the killers. And I remember as a kid that they were the prime suspects, man, in the late 90s, early 2000s. And obviously with the DNA evidence, they were able to exonerate them. Angie, what are your final thoughts?
You know what? This case just has too many crazy and curious facts. Do you know the case of Natalie Holloway?
No, I never heard of it.
Okay, so that's another highly requested as well. So apparently, that was a girl that got missing in Aruba in 2005, I think, and her mother started dating JonBenet Ramsey because they have like similarities and like in common interests, something like that. I don't know, which is crazy to me. That's crazy. Just like two parents that have missing kids, fucked. That's just fucked up. But yeah, people wanted to know what do you think about the case and who do you think did kill JonBenet?
I personally, I have no clue. Like, there's too many suspects, but the problem is that the DNA doesn't match.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
like that. It is what it is. You
Yeah,
know.
but I will argue that the DNA doesn't match because the crime scene was contaminated. So
True, but they
it
did
can be
have they did have an unknown male's DNA on the victim.
yeah, but it could be anyone.
Well, if it was anyone, then they could have they could have. I mean, they could have easily. Because here's the thing: you got to remember that they didn't have DNA evidence like that back when she was killed.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it kind of was around, but they didn't really like have it like that. So, I don't know. I don't think the family did it. I don't know.
You don't think the family did?
I don't think so. What you think? You think the family did it?
I don't know. I just find weird that why would they have to make a book and give away so many interviews? It's just
Well, here's the thing. They got a lot of heat back in the day.
yeah.
Like, it was bad. I remember as a kid watching like them on the news, everyone saying that they were the killers.
I know. Yeah, I know. I mean, I can understand that, but it's still like
It's stupid to make a book for it, but
yeah, but I've seen so many cases like this, and nobody does that. You know, like
writes a book. Well,
writes a
unless you're
book.
O.J. Simpson, and then you make it. I did it. If I did it.
Yeah, well, I don't
So,
know. It's just crazy.
yeah.
Everything is crazy about this
It's
case.
wild. But anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed that. Comment below who you think the killer was. Don't forget to like the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Fed It. Peace.